Hi, lifestylers. So I recently saw a quote on Facebook that said, may you attract someone who speaks your language so that you don't spend a lifetime translating your soul. And this was a really interesting quote because I have for decades now been a huge fan of love languages, communication styles. I remember reading Florence Littauer, Personality Plus, Gary Chapman, 5 Love Languages. And what I loved about this quote was it's so true. But how often do we how often do we attract somebody who speaks our language? Not very often. And often we are so busy and unaware that we communicate in different ways that when things start to go pear-shaped, because let's face it, in the honeymoon phase, we are going to be probably showering that person with all of the love languages. We're going to be so caught up in the head rush of the honeymoon phase that we kind of miss the signs along the way that that person doesn't necessarily see the world the same as us and doesn't take in the world the same way as us. And when I was thinking about this quote, it got me thinking, well, what about if we learned how we communicate, how we show up in the world, and how we like to give and receive? When we learn that about ourselves and then learn how everyone else may or may not interpret and show up in the world, wouldn't that actually be a better strategy than hoping that we manifest into our life somebody who speaks our language? And interestingly, I recently met somebody and we were actually blown away at how quickly we established commonalities, and I call them synchronicities. And in this particular instance, our similarities were at a really deep level. Our trauma that we had experienced was very similar. We had a lot of similar ways that we see and interpret the world. And whilst we've actually had completely different journeys, we've kind of come to the same conclusions. It's like we've walked the world like this to come around like this. And when we did the 5 love languages test, all of our love languages were almost identical. And what I believe is happening here is that, yes, I do manifestation. I teach manifesting for a living. But what I have actually done over the years is I've actually cleared out all of the emotional junk from the trunk that was keeping me stuck, that was, I believed, was keeping me safe. And I kept putting out to the universe that I really wanted somebody who spoke my language, who, what I did was I said that I want somebody who, my top non-negotiables. And I did a video just recently on what are the 2 top non-negotiables that you need that when they show up in the right environment, that relationship can actually cultivate and thrive. And so therein lies the question, do you even know how you show up in the world? Because if you don't, how can you expect to attract the same so that you're not having to translate all the time? And I remember back in, I think it was like 2001, 2002, when I was engaged to my ex-husband, there was a couple that we met and they were the first people to introduce me and my ex-husband to the 5 love languages. And they gave the example of she was an acts of service and he was quality time when it came to their primary love language. And what they did not realize until they read the book was after dinner, she would start cleaning up and want to go and clean up the kitchen. And all he wanted was for her to just sit down and spend some time together talking. But she was so intent on cleaning up that until they'd read the 5 love languages and recognized where they were communicating differently, and made that decision together. They communicated each other's need, and then they made a compromise that after each meal, they would sit there for at least 10 minutes, just having conversation, enjoying one another's company before she got up and started doing the dishes. And now that he was aware that acts of service was her primary love language, he would get up and he would help her with the dishes, because her sitting there for an extra 10 minutes was communicating to him in his love language, and him then helping her with the dishes was communicating to her in her love language. However, if we don't know that about ourselves, how can we be expected to communicate that to the other person? And on top of that, if we have previous wounding, which is where our attachment styles come in, we may not feel comfortable communicating to the other person. So there is a couple of different things that we are looking at here. We have love languages, we have attachment styles, we have communication styles. We also have unconscious programming that we're not aware of. So what I am doing at the moment is building a course called Falling in Love with Your Fate. Now, this course goes over all of these things. It teaches you, how do you show up in the world? How do you interpret the world? And then how do you receive the world and those around us? Because when you learn that about yourself and you understand why you've had to go through certain life experiences that you may not have felt were truly fair, and, you know, why do I have to lose, you know, 3 of the closest family members in my life when somebody has 6 siblings and, you know, they've never had to experience the loss of anybody? You know, why did I have to go through a divorce when somebody is happily married for 50 years? When we can actually start to interpret why things are happening and why they're happening for us instead of to us, and how we have been, up until this point, how we've been absorbing, taking in and interpreting that, and then putting that back out into the world. When we can learn that about ourselves, we learn to have a kindness and a compassion for ourselves that previously we most likely have not given. And then when we learn that about ourselves, we can then actually put that out to the world, to everyone else that we come into contact with. So if this sounds intriguing to you, and I know it does, because it's very different from how most people will start their personal growth journey. Most people will start listening to YouTube videos. They will start reading books. But the problem with trying to go it on your own is that it's still open to interpretation, our own interpretation of what that person is trying to communicate. And if we don't communicate in the same way, then we might be getting our wires crossed. And let's face it, if you go and buy something from IKEA, say a flat pack, and you bring it home, you usually spend about a good 2 to 5, 6, maybe 7 hours trying to interpret the very limited instruction manual that they give you, usually a flimsy piece of paper. Whereas if you actually called on somebody who knew what they were doing and asked for help, then you could actually get that done in, you know, probably a fraction of the time, and then you can get on and enjoy the rest of your day. So if you'd like to know a little bit more about how I can help you on your journey from where you are right now, which may be feeling lost, stuck, you may be feeling broken. I don't believe anyone is broken. I believe that we're just a little bit disheveled, and there's always a way back. There is always a way back, but we need to recognize that we're at the point where we want to heal, where we want to clear out that unconscious programming and those unconscious wounds that are sitting there that are driving everything. We need to be able to recognize that, and awareness is number one. Awareness is key. So if this video has resonated with you and you would like to know a little bit more about how you can join me on this journey, then please click on the link below. We will delve down a little bit more deeply into the different ways that we show up in the world and how that can be misinterpreted and what you can be doing about it. So if you've enjoyed this video and you're sick and tired of living a life that isn't just really working for you, it's not bringing you joy, it's always making you question yourself, and you're ready to make that first step towards change, then click on the link below and download our free ebook, and it will give you 5 tips on how you can get started towards living the life that you want versus the life that you've accepted for yourself up until now. That's it for now. I'm Leisa Q, and have a fabulous day.